welcome to the House of ZK Radio, which is a focused podcast and media channel exploring everything ZK, zero knowledge. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alice from House of ZK. I'm joined here with Eric, who is CSO of Polyhedra. Very excited to have you here today, Eric.
Yes, thanks everyone for coming and everyone watching online. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering, Eric, if we can first start off with an introduction to yourself, maybe your origin story of how you got involved in the Web3 and ZK spaces. And I know that you focused on marketing previously as well. So I wanted to hear maybe your journey into the marketing space, into the strategy space, community building, and kind of your current focuses right now.
Sure, absolutely. When I about 15 years ago, when I was in undergrad, I was studying economics and computer science. I had visions, or at least a lot of my classmates, went the traditional finance route, and it was very apparent to me after a couple of summer internships that was not going to be my journey. And I had always been interested in exploring new technologies and kind of pushing the envelope in terms of like what was possible, and so I found my way to startups. I worked for a number of kind of B2B startups. HubSpot, which some of you may know, was kind of the first job right out of college, and I ended up in marketing because the CMO who was my boss was the person that I enjoyed interviewing with the most. So I kind of found my way into marketing. Because of my somewhat technical background, I had a knack for kind of explaining and understanding complex topics and distilling that into something that was easily understandable. And so, throughout my career, kind of found myself really focusing on working at companies that were catering to developers. And then a few years ago, while personally invested and involved in crypto, a recruiter reached out to me about an opportunity at Layer 0, which is an interoperability protocol and a close partner of Polyhedra's, for a head of marketing role. Ended up kind of making the transition into Web3 professionally with them. And then had the opportunity to meet the Polyhedra team. Was very impressed with their kind of research background and their expertise in cryptography, and with their goals of kind of building out the go-to-market side of the business. There was a good opportunity for me to join and build that out, and that's what led to me joining Polyhedra.
Great, and it's really awesome to hear that you had both the technical experience and expertise as well as the marketing and storytelling component as well, which I believe is really essential for any type of education or onboarding new developers into your ecosystem. So it's very great that you saw both sides of the spectrum there. And just on that topic relating to onboarding new developers, I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on, say, the current challenges that you see in the ZK space that current developers are facing that may be preventing more mainstream adoption. We have been seeing quite a lot of improvements over the years. Our proof times have decreased, proof costs as well, but there's still some barriers towards more mainstream adoption. So I'm very curious to hear about your thoughts on just the main challenges that we're still experiencing.
I think, especially kind of going all the way back to HubSpot, I've been a strong believer that, creating great content and informational content is going to be incredibly important. If you create content that answers the questions that your audience is asking, they're going to find you a valuable resource. And then when the time comes for them to have a need for your product, they're going to end up using it. I do think that, we as an industry, as the ZK industry, are doing a much better job, I think, creating this type of educational content. I mean, this is one example, but if you are a developer and you go online and search for how to, build verifiable programs, I think you're going to find a lot of good resources out there. I think the developer tooling is also becoming a lot easier to use. Obviously, there's a lot of really powerful kind of ZKVMs being developed that are, I would say, closing the gap in terms of performance between themselves and having to develop your circuits from scratch. And so as we find ourselves with tools that make it easier to develop ZK but still have that performance from a proof generation or proof verification standpoint, I think we're going to start to see more and more developers use it. It's just about making it easier for them to tap into.
Absolutely. Just finding that balance between, optimizing for performance, for cost, but then also making that experience better and adding those kinds of abstraction layers.
Yeah, and I think, it's not necessarily that you have to choose one or the other. I think for most developers getting into ZK for the first time, they are probably going to choose to use a ZK VM. And if you can, if they can reach that aha moment and understand the power of zero knowledge, whether it's for scalability or privacy or whatever they're trying to accomplish, maybe the performance isn't something that they would be happy, putting out into production or rolling out publicly, but at least they'll be able to see kind of what is possible, and that might intrigue them to kind of dive deeper into, maybe then they do want to learn more about how they can go a little bit lower level. So I think it's about making it as easy for people to kind of fill that top of the funnel, and then we'll work on kind of moving them through that funnel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also I wanted to go into more of Polyhedra's current focuses right now. So I know that Polyhedra has been making pretty great strides towards the ZKML space. Wondering if you can shed some light into what you see as the greatest opportunities within ZKML, maybe some current gaps or limitations with other solutions that are also focusing on ZKML, and how Polyhedra is addressing that.
Yeah, so I'll take a step back first and kind of talk about how we got to where we are today, because if you have heard of Polyhedra before, you may know us as a ZK interoperability protocol, and that was really where we kind of started. We were a research organization. Our founders wrote the paper on ZK Bridge, and we launched a product aptly titled ZK Bridge, which is still the leading zero knowledge secured interoperability protocol. In order to do that, we had to build an extremely performant proof system, because nobody wants to wait for their funds or their tokens to move between chains. I think that's one of the most anxiety inducing, times from an individual's perspective, is like, are these tokens going to show up in my wallet on this new chain after I've bridged? And so because of our, founders' cryptography, expertise, they decided to build a proof system built on the GKR protocol, where the advantages from a proof generation time perspective were really apparent. And so that allowed us to generate proofs of, Ethereum full consensus in under 10 seconds. And so now that the proof generation time is less than the block verification time, proof generation is no longer the bottleneck. And now that ZK Bridge is a really mature product, we started to look for other areas where this extremely performant proof system could be applied. And that's going to be, in areas where real-time validation, real-time verification is important. And AI is one of those areas that we think has huge potential. But we also think it's an area where there is a lot of, I would say, opacity, like it's a black box by nature. And we've seen, a lot of mistakes that AI has made that have resulted in kind of huge financial losses for the company that has been responsible. But we've also seen times where there have been AI errors and responsibility hasn't been taken, or it's not clear kind of what the issue was or who was at fault or where the model may have gone wrong. And so we started to think about how we could apply ZK in this context. And we started to build developer tools like ZK PyTorch that developers can utilize to turn any model that they're creating into a verifiable model. And so now if a inference puts out a result that maybe is questionable, we can create a zero knowledge proof to understand, this model did actually behave as expected, or it did follow the constraints that we wanted it to follow. And there was no issue, or vice versa. Maybe that's not the case. And so it adds a little bit of transparency to the, AI execution. And in turn, I think it will create an incentive for developers that are working on AI to think about building AI in a kind of more responsible and trustworthy manner. So how we got to this point was because of these performance improvements that we are seeing. The verification of an LLM used to take days. More recently, we've put out recent benchmarks where we've gotten that down to hours. And then now through some parallelization and CUDA acceleration, we are expecting to get it down to seconds by the end of the year. And so we really think that the time is right based on kind of the hardware and the improvements on the software and the algorithm side, that it's kind of the perfect time for us to really focus on building verifiable AI.
Yeah, and it's really great to hear that now these the proving speeds are no longer a bottleneck, and it's very impressive to hear that the time to prove, say, the LLM model has decreased by orders of magnitude. It's very impressive. I wanted to hear about the specific parts of the life cycle within ZKML. Within an ML model that you guys address. So whether it's for the training data, for the verification of the actual model, what parts of the life cycle do you see ZKML and maybe what Polyhedra is focusing on addressing?
Yeah, so I think that you're kind of touching on two of the main areas that I think this is going to become really important for. So the first is inference. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but has the inference that was generated, was it using the model that I expected to be using, and was that inference executed correctly or generated correctly, is one component. I think the other component is on the training process. So was this model trained on data that I expected to be trained on? And in certain cases, is that data compliant, or does that data include the data points that I want to make sure it does include? So AI inference, AI training. And then I think the third is kind of adding in this privacy element. So the ability to, run an inference on private inputs or train a model on private data. And so those are some other areas where ZKML can be applied. And, AI is growing more efficient and more powerful, I think, as it consumes more and more data. But there are certain verticals where it isn't accelerating as quickly because the data that it needs is very sensitive. And so I think we're going to see, huge gains in areas like healthcare and finance, supply chain, where the data is not kind of publicly available, but really siloed in maybe these individual enterprises or even with individuals. And we can tap into that by leveraging some of the ZKML tools that we're building.
Incredible. And I also wanted to ask you about, to my knowledge, Polyhedra also offers these opportunistic ZKML proofs where you're having this kind of hybrid approach, utilizing the challenge-based approach that we see within the optimistic verification, but then also combining that with the validity proof. So I'm wondering if you can maybe shed some light into some of the advantages that come with this hybrid utilization.
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to kind of a cost and performance standpoint right now. Like I said, we're getting performance down to a point where it's going to be near real time, by the end of the year. But in the interim, we don't want to wait to get to that point. We want to still enable some of the benefits of verifiable AI today. And we found that kind of the best way to do that in this current state is to allow it to be done in kind of this optimistic fashion. In the future, we believe that, every inference, every AI action will come along with a proof of its, authenticity or its validity. I think we're working towards that, but in order to kind of showcase the power of verifiable AI today, we've opted to kind of use this optimistic approach as we transition to one where, all AI is verifiable.
Got it. And just on the topic of some of the other kinds of systems and offerings that Polyhedra has, to my knowledge, you guys also have the ProofCloud. And I'm wondering if you can speak about some of the importance and the advantages in democratically distributing the access for proving. And also wanted to ask you about some of the current challenges, maybe current limitations that we've seen in similar solutions that have also tried to address this.
Yeah, so I think this kind of ties back all the way to maybe one of the first questions you asked was like, how do we make it easier for developers to utilize zero knowledge? One of the kind of friction points that we identified was that they didn't understand, what was necessary or how to spin up the hardware required to run a prover. And then even if they did kind of have that knowledge, it could also be prohibitively expensive to kind of do so themselves. And so we built ProofCloud, which is a cloud proving platform in collaboration with Google Cloud, in order to make the process of spinning up a prover extremely easy. I mean, you can do it with a couple clicks of your mouse and, upload your proof and then voila, it's live and it's ready to go. At the same time, as you are kind of bootstrapping and growing your application, you may not have the need to kind of, utilize a full machine 24 hours a day. And so what we can do is we can kind of combine, the computation needed across a lot of our customers and amortize that cost so that it is, not financially too difficult for these companies to kind of spin something up and bootstrap their ZK application.
Mm-hmm, exactly, and it's really great that now users don't really have to worry about the proving infrastructure, and instead they can just through a few clicks just upload their proof externally. And I feel like that helps a lot with the developer experience, especially now that they don't have to worry about the proving side as much or the logistics behind it, but now they can just focus on, say, the business logic of the application that they're trying to build.
I think not only that, but we've found that there are certain kind of proofs that developers may want to utilize across a wide variety of applications, and we want to make it easier for them to leverage some of the work that we've done at Polyhedra. So I mentioned kind of the proof of Ethereum full consensus. Well, we can make proofs like that available to users of ProofCloud so that if they do have a use case for that type of proof, they can just utilize what we've already built, again, with a few clicks of the mouse, and not have to kind of spend the time to build that out themselves.
I see. So it's a very streamlined process almost.
Yes.
I see. And we touched on this a bit, but back when you were speaking about the reasoning behind why Polyhedra decided to build its own proof system and some of the advantages that came with the incredibly fast proving times that resulted from it. I'm wondering if you can speak about how you see real-time proving playing out in the future. Do you see that as something that we can expect in the near term, or if not, what current challenges, what current barriers do we still need to get across before we are able to reach that stage? And say once we have, or if we reach close enough real-time proving, what sort of new applications or use cases can we expect from it?
Yeah, so I think we're pretty close. Our team is spending a lot of time on this parallelization and GPU acceleration, which is going to accelerate the, give us performance improvements, another order of magnitude or 2 orders of magnitude gain on the performance side. I think that really what it's going to enable is are these real-time use cases. So from a, everyone is familiar with ZK rollups, and it may not be necessary for, the transaction proofs to be posted and verified in real time on the L1. But there may be other use cases where it is important to have that proof in real time. We think AI is one of those areas, and that's kind of why we've decided to focus on it. Bridging is another one where, these proofs need to be available and verified in real time, and so that's why we started there. So those are kind of 2 of our areas of focus. But anytime where any real-time applications, it's going to be important to have these extremely performant proof systems.
Got it. And so we can be expecting real-time proving pretty soon.
Yes.
Nice, very exciting. And then also, just going back to the privacy-related side, I know that Polyhedra has or offers privacy as kind of like an opt-in feature. So very curious to hear about some of the approaches that you took in terms of regulatory compliance. So some of the regulatory first privacy controls that Polyhedra has considered, and how that approach can address both sides of the spectrum, whether a user wants to be fully transparent versus like fully private.
Yeah, so I think when we thought about this problem, one, regulation is always changing. And so we didn't want to build a solution that kind of catered towards regulation and compliance today, because I think that's always going to be a moving target, and we didn't want to be in the game. We are not attorneys. We didn't want to be making that decision for our customers, and so the approach that we took was to build a very flexible system. And the reason that we have kind of started to think about privacy is kind of twofold. One, I think you hear a lot about, why haven't we seen crypto adopted more for payments? Well, there are a lot of people who don't want their entire, credit card transaction history on the blockchain. So from a consumer perspective, I think that there is, a certain subset of people where if we enable privacy on the blockchain, they're going to be more comfortable using it. And then from an institutional level, as institutions, we're starting to see a lot of interest around RWAs. And I think initially there was the hypothesis or potentially the approach was going to be to use private or permission blockchains in order to allow these institutions to, move tokenized assets between each other. What we found now is that there is significant interest to kind of have all of this handled on public blockchains. At the same time, there is still this demand for privacy. They want to have visibility into the transaction details. They want the recipient or their counterparty to have visibility into the transaction details, and they want to have a governing body or a compliance organization to have visibility. But beyond that, they may want to limit the visibility into some of those transactions. And so the way that we've architected this system is in such a way that, it's very flexible with regards to who can kind of decrypt and see the sender and the receiver and the amount and the token that was transferred between these parties. And we can do it in a number of ways. We can do kind of, aggregate where we send over aggregate data on these transactions. We can do it when that data is requested by an authorized entity, or we can set some sort of criteria and then decrypt if let's say an example would be if a transaction is above a certain amount, maybe that's kind of a trigger for decrypting the transaction details. So we really made this system very flexible because we know that the needs, not only the needs of our customers are going to have vary greatly, but that the regulation is going to also probably vary and change over time.
Yeah, it's really great to hear the amount of flexible options that you provide and adjusting that to any kinds of potentially changing things in the regulatory landscape or changing needs of the users as well. So really great to hear that kind of flexibility. And then also on your side, relating to your role, I'm wondering if you have any sort of advice that you can offer to any marketers, any community builders in the audience, any strategists, just on those who are looking to scale their projects further or looking to, say, increase the number of developers that are within their community.
Yeah, I would say, having conversations with your customers or with your potential customers as early as possible. I think what I've seen a lot of times in this industry is that often, we are, and I don't think I'm definitely not the first to say this, but building a solution in search of a problem. And a lot of people are kind of building because they find the technology interesting and they want to solve hard problems. And so, they go out and they identify this problem and then they try to solve it, but then they realize, well, you know what? There was a very small subset of people that actually had this problem that I'm trying to solve. And so I think the more time that you can spend, in focus groups or interviewing potential customers and really clearly identifying a pain point early on and then building to solve that pain point versus kind of just getting straight into building. I think we have a habit of kind of, putting pen to paper or hands to keyboard very quickly. And oftentimes what happens is then you kind of, you waste a lot of time and you have to go back to the drawing board. So take that time early on. In construction, they say measure twice or measure 3 times and cut once. I think we can take that practice and bring it into the crypto space as well.
Yeah, great advice. And thank you for mentioning that. I mean, I think everyone in this space is very excited to build, very excited to innovate, but sometimes it's necessary to take a step back and evaluate what you're doing and get feedback, and from there iterate based on what was said. So I appreciate you for mentioning that. And then also, I'm very curious to hear about your general vision for the ZK space in the next few years. So we talked a little bit about real-time proving and some of the applications that it can enable. Do you have any other predictions for what we'll see the space, what the space will be in the next couple of years, or any kinds of challenges that you foresee coming up?
Yeah, I think some of the areas that I'm really excited about that I know some of the teams that talked here today are solving, a lot of the work around ZK-TLS and being able to verify like any, information that you could find on the internet is very exciting. And I love to see kind of this bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. Obviously, identity and ZK have been kind of hand in hand for a long time. And so starting to see some of these solutions come out that allow for a universal ID or universal KYC, I think that's going to become really important, especially as we're starting to see, continued growth in the RWA space. Again, back to regulation, there is going to be a need for us to figure out kind of the KYC, AML issues that come with that. And I think that ZK offers like a real tangible solution to that problem. And then again, on the AI space, right now we're in the first inning. As we start to see AI agents taking actions with actual monetary consequences, as we start to see AI agents making business decisions that are very critical and that could have a huge economic impact, there is going to need to be more transparency and the ability to have more verifiability with regards to their actions. And I think, that's what we're focused on. So obviously I'm very excited about it, but I think those are 3 areas that I am expecting to see a lot of progress being made over the next, by the end of the year.
Absolutely. And just as a last question before we close, I wanted to give you the opportunity to make any sort of announcements on Polyhedra's behalf, or for anyone in the audience who wants to get more involved with Polyhedra, how can they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can reach out to me on Twitter if you're interested in learning more. My handle is @Vreeland, just my last name. Or you can DM the Polyhedra account, Polyhedra ZK. I am always responding from that account as well. You can visit our website, polyhedra.network. Again, if you're building in the ZK space and you want to learn more about Expander, and how to utilize Expander in your ZK application, or you're building in the AI space and want to learn more about the importance of verifiability, or maybe you're interested in interoperability and want to learn more about ZK Bridge, we're always interested in talking to builders, and so I encourage you to reach out and get in touch, and we'd love to chat with anyone and everyone.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate all the insights from your thoughts on ZKML to regulatory compliance, to how you guys are really focusing on the developer experience. So really appreciate all the insights from today.
I really appreciate being here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much.